Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as we do, come kick it with us already. We're doing this every single week. I mean, now we might be over 3 times a week in the Olympics preview period. We're really cranking them out. Special guests here today to help us get through one of the favorites, I would say. So very excited about this episode. Subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. I am your host, Dino De Cespedes, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
Oh, I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. And that is because we are celebrating the return of one of the greatest guests in the history of this podcast. She is a footballer, a PhD candidate, and a journalist who is currently a freelance football writer for Forbes. She previously played for Lebanon's women's national team. And in the ecosystem of great friends of the pod, we consider her among the greatest, as I said. Please welcome back to the show for her second appearance, our number 10, Assile Toufaily.
Hi guys, how are you? Thank you so much for this introduction. As you said, you're considering me as one of the stars of your show, but I have to say that over the last couple of months, I said it last time, I'm really enjoying your episodes. I'm also really enjoying the choices of the guests. And now I have this weight on my shoulders that after the 3 previous guests, it's on me this time. So I'm really excited for this episode.
You'll more than live up to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely happy to have you. Yeah. You're at the top of the leaderboard in terms of appearances on the show. It's basically you and Cam Pope. So I think we're going to be hoping for a deep France run so we can get you back and get you up to the top spot. Assile, I got to start. I want to rewind back a bit. I got to say some of our audience was very emotional after your last appearance before the OL Barcelona Champions League final. They had a lot of things to say. Nothing too bad, but they definitely let their emotions maybe get the best of them in our comments section. So anything in particular you want to see to those Barcelona fans?
Not really. Actually, I saw the comments and I talked about this with Grant. I'm one of those people who know how to separate women's football from men's football. I love Real Madrid on the men's side, but on the women's side, I watch them, I see the progress and everything, but I don't like the club system of not investing in the women's team as much. So when I was talking about Olympique Lyonnais against Barca, I wasn't really doing it from a Real Madrid point of view. It was rather from someone who's seen how crucial this match was for Olympique Lyonnais' own success for the future, because we've seen how French football has downgraded over the years. England are better now, the Spanish system is better, and OL needed this win. So I believe that they had a chance, and I've watched the game 2 or 3 times. I think Barca were great, but you'll never have this bad performance of Lyon ever again. They were really bad. So it's like they were too emotionally unready to play Barca because they knew that they're gonna lose possession. Like Barca will have the possession all match long and they're just gonna run behind the ball. And this is something they're not used to because in the French league they have the possession all throughout the season. So I think that they weren't ready. So the midfield battle was lost from the very first minutes of it. I believe that Lindsay Horan or Van de Donk can bring something additional. So I'm not gonna apologize or come back from what I said. I'm still convinced that OL could have played or managed a 1-0 win if they managed to close up their defense, but they weren't. The first goal from Aitana Bonmati, she literally just ran behind Damaris Egurola and she was one-on-one with Vanessa Gil, and we know how fast Aitana is in one-on-ones. So I think that they just Barca were here. They wanted to win. They wanted the revenge from 2022, and Olympique Lyonnais weren't. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, let's be honest. A little bit of luck for Aitana. A little deflection. Who knows what happens from there.
There you go. Now they're going to come after you, even though you picked them, Dino.
Go back and check the tapes before you start commenting. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the France preview. I think we all have pretty high expectations for the squad, but you're on the ground. What would you say the expectations are for this team?
It has to be the gold medal. You're the hosts. It's the last chance for a couple of players like Wendy Renard, Amandine Henry, Eugénie Le Sommer, who are all in their 30s or mid-30s. So they have to push for the gold medal. And if they enter the competition not wanting to win gold, it's going to be hard. So that's the normal thing to do, is just to enter the competition wanting to win gold. So that's easy. as for the fans or for the experts and the journalists around the women's team, I've noticed that some of them are hesitant because of the last performances, because of some statistics in the recent months. I would say that they have to try to win it. And if they don't, because we know that I've tried to find France's road, they might bump into Spain in the semi-final. So when we saw the 2-0 loss in the Nations League, they have to at least hope to get the third place. So at least a medal, because France has never won anything on the international level, not even a single medal. So they have to. Or else, why would, I don't know, we consider Wendy Renard as one of the best in the world, but herself, she wouldn't be satisfied if she has 20 plus trophies with Olympique Lyonnais and zero with France. So she has to
Yeah.
at least win something.
I'm curious. I mean, I think people know manager Herve Renard. He's going to move on after this tournament anyway. Let's say they do fall short of a medal. They lose to Spain. Maybe they lose in the bronze medal match. Are there shakeups you can do in an organization, like in a national team organization? Are there other parts of the infrastructure that they would like have to think about? Or do you kind of sunset all those veteran players that you talked about and say, hey guys, thanks for everything you've done? Like, what do you do as a national team if you kind of fall short of expectations outside of just the manager leaving?
If you want to take an example of the US women's national team lately, it was Vlatko who resigned, and they brought in a manager who's considered one of the top three in the world in women's football, in Emma Hayes.
Mm.
So it might be something as simple as just a managerial change. But I believe that in France's condition or situation, it's different because the issue isn't about the national team, it's the league. And I'm one of the people who are convinced that when you have I'm not gonna say bad league, but a league with kind of no competition or no high level intensity, you're gonna have kind of a bad national team. So
Mhm.
even if some will say that also in Spain you have only Barca dominating the league, but the quality of players in Barca is incredible because of La Masia, because of the whole Spanish system, where it's all about possession, keeping the ball, learning how to be excellent technically. And you've seen it with the national team. They won the Women's World Cup, the Men's Euros, even on the under 19, on under 17 sides, they're winning everything. So in France, I think it has to be a change from the bottom. If you look at the number of players who are coming up from the youth ranks to the professional teams in France, most of them aren't getting the minutes. And if you look at this squad as well, you don't have youngsters. So how do you want the team to improve if your youngest player is Salma Basha at 23?
Yeah.
Mm.
You have Jaden Shaw at 19 with the US national team. So there has to be this change of philosophy where you have to make the league professional. They just did it. It had to be done 5 years later after the Women's World Cup, which was hosted in France. They should have used it as a heritage or legacy to improve the game, elevate the number of players, youth players, introduce new teams, make it professional. But they just did it now because they've noticed, or like it's like they got a bump in their face that okay, we lost the battle. We're not the most developed country in Europe in terms of women's football. We have to move. They should have done
Mm.
this a few years ago. So I think for this case, in case they fail, nothing will be really done except for the managerial change and to just wait and see what the professional league might change. But the real test will be the 2027 World Cup and the Euros next year.
With regard to this French roster, you talked about the lack of maybe like young players coming up. I know Vicky Becho's there as a reserve, but were you surprised by any of the roster decisions specifically?
I've kind of expected it. Like, if you have 18 players, I think for me, I had 16 players who were surely going. Because
Mm.
since the Women's World Cup, it's kind of the same players. You've seen with the Spanish national team, you have the last 15 who came back to the national team. And the Emma Hayes added many players recently. Alex Morgan isn't called up to. So you have changes. In France, it's kind of stagnating. You have the same players. Herve Renard loves this
Hmm.
idea of having the experienced players with a few additions. So I had 16, 17 players who were kind of 100% going to be called in. My only hesitation was actually seeing Jenny Le Sommer because
Mm.
she's still recovering from an injury.
Mm.
And
Yep.
I think 2 days ago, right after I forgot if it was after or before the Ireland match or during the press conference, Herve Renard said that she had a minor injury, I think quadriceps or something, and she's not expected to play in the group stage. So
Oh my God.
I love that she's the top scorer in the history of France. I love what she brings on the field. But this is the Olympics, it's not the World Cup. You have 12 nations, it's a very short competition. So bringing Eugenie, and maybe she won't play until the semifinals, if they reach the semifinals, I don't really like it. They say that sometimes they take a risk by this, but we all remember what Didier Deschamps did with Karim Benzema. Benzema was about to miss 2 matches in the group stage, and he just sent him back and didn't even bring someone else. So he had a squad missing a player. So I really thought he would take Vicky Becho and not take Eugenie. Actually, I wanted this, but at the same time, I knew that he was gonna take the most experienced player, and maybe this is her last Olympics ever, or maybe international competition. And I also thought he would take F. Perisset, Chelsea's right back. She's a starter for Chelsea, and with France, she's always on the bench. It makes you wonder why. Like when you see how he's playing, he plays. Wendy is kind of always the fixed center back, and then you have Buck aside her. But if Buck isn't fit, he has either Laclar or the Almeida. He plays one as a center back and the other as a right back, but she's not a right back. Like she's not purely a right back. So he's using a
Yeah.
center back as a right back, and he has F. Perisset. F. Perisset is a reserve. So it's kind of like why being stubborn? Why wanting to keep the same names if you know that Perisset has been excellent for Chelsea throughout the season? So this is my only regret.
Yeah, I feel like you see that with some managers and people on the outside, pundits, and sometimes even players. You just kind of look at it. It's just, I think using the word stubborn is accurate. Or it's just like, dude, you got to at least try something. Like I always say, I'm not going to pretend like I know more about football than Herve Renard, but I do know sometimes if you have an outside perspective, you might look at something and be like, hey man, this is actually right in front of your face. And it's obvious to a lot of people. You just can't see it.
I actually think that the U.S. team had a little bit of that going into the 23 World Cup. A lot of players there that you saw like immediately after the World Cup, they were kind of out of the mix, out of the U.S. WNT mix. So I think that Emma Hayes coming in has made a good amount of changes. I think we've seen a lot of roster upheaval. So maybe a coaching change in France could be sort of what's needed there. But obviously it's always tricky too to have a manager that you know is 1 foot out the door, in a tournament like this, because you just sort of wonder, are his messages being heard? Or, does he have the same influence in the locker room? Is it sort of going to be like a one last rally for the coach moment? Or is it sort of like, all right, let's get through this tournament and see what happens?
There was also this problem, I don't know if you guys knew about it, but during the CAN, which is the African Championship, the Ivory Coast head coach was fired, and the federation called Herve Renard and asked if he would love to come and coach the Ivory Coast national team for 20 days duration. And instead
Oh
of
my God.
saying no, he took the negotiations with the French Federation. The
wow.
the French players said they were okay, and it's not a big deal, and we understand his choice, and he's 100% focused on us. But how is he focused on the national team if he's searching for an adventure abroad? So this caused a lot of problems in France. It was in January. And right after that, you've seen that the performance isn't great. You're not enjoying the matches. There's no tactical schemes in the match. And you have him saying that he's not going to stay. So was this just a rebound for him? Like he has just finished from Saudi Arabia. He wanted to be in the media, so he got the French national team. You know how it is followed by the French media, and maybe just want to find another nation to coach. So I had my reserves on this. I knew he was a good choice, but at the same time, he's not a women's football expert. He's not a coach he never coached women's football, and he's here for a duration of, I think he stayed 1 year and 4 months because he came in March. Yeah, not even a year and a half, and he's just leaving to join another national side. So this also left some questions. Was it really the best option, or was it just a media coup from the federation, just wanting to bring a big name to show that they invested in women's football?
Could be.
That is really interesting. And he has, I had to look it up just to make sure I wasn't misremembering. Yeah, but he has he has a pretty in-depth history in African football on the men's side. That is pretty crazy you're the manager of the French national team and to think that like, maybe I can moonlight a little bit or pick up a side gig doing, doing this other job. That's pretty bold, I would say. Maybe a bit, maybe edging on the side of arrogant, if I could say.
If you just compare it with what Sarina Wiegman said 2 days ago when she was asked about the Three Lions rumors, the FA had her as an option. She's like, this is so disrespectful for the women's side. I'm 100% committed with the women's side. Maybe she's already talking with the FA about this. Maybe she will end up being the men's coach. But she has the qualifiers. She's here. She has a match. She's not jumping around searching for another opportunity. Or personally, I didn't appreciate it at all. I had an opinion about Herve Renard. I was convinced that he might bring something new. And when I saw this decisions, I kind of withdrew. I'm like, no, it's not the best option. You really have to have someone who wants to develop the women's football in the country, not only work for his CV or work to have another job post France.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think a big part of a manager's responsibilities, and it sounds like it's not something that Renard has really been focused on, but to me, I always think about developing young players. You had mentioned earlier that there aren't a ton of really young players on this roster, but if you kind of had to look around, is there anybody that jumps out, or are we looking at, or will we have to go to the reserves, or like, is there anyone who might, on a star-studded roster, is there any kind of youngish player who people might look and say, oh, okay, this player is even better than I expected?
I have one name in my head. We've seen Vicky Besho at the Women's World Cup, so we know she's got the potential and she could have had her chance. I don't know. You have five or four forwards. I have the list right in front of me. Maybe Sandy Baltimore wasn't as important as Vicky Besho in the last year, for example. But for me, the player who had to be in the squad is a 19-year-old Ines Ben Yahya. She's a Olympique Lyonnais Academy product, and she played the season on loan at Le Havre. She finished as the top prospect of the Arkema. She won the award of being the best, and she's back with Lyon now. And so far, there are talks in Lyon that she's gonna be one of the key players in midfield. She plays as a 10, and ever since
Wow.
Luisa Nesib back in, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, France never had a real number 10, the playmaker who can really get in between the lines. And she was with the squad. She got an injury. So some of them are saying that maybe that's the reason, but she wasn't even in the list when Hervé announced it. So I would have loved to have Ines because all our midfielders, like Sandy Toletti, Amandine Henry, Kenza Dali, Grace Gayoro, they all CDMs and CMs. You don't have a pure CAM who can drive the ball forward or create these chances. And you've noticed all of France's game is from the wide. Someone who comes, plays to Sakina or Salma and just cross and hope for a miracle from Katoto. So it's not... it's not something from the width, and it's something that France used to have with Louisa Nassib and Camille Abili. So I really wanted to see Ines Ben Yahya because she's, in terms of technically gifted or technically able to drive through the middle, she was the go-to player. So I really wanted to see her.
Well, that's something we're going to keep an eye out for this upcoming season for sure. I wanted to ask a quick question now, moving things on to the pitch.
Yeah.
Like tournament's coming up, it's right around the corner. I don't want to put the gold medal pressure necessarily on France, but if this team is to reach a final, let's say, what would you imagine is the recipe? Like what kind of ball do they need to be playing for that outcome to hit?
I think it has to be adapt something that is that works according to every opponent. I've had a discussion with a former national team player for an article for Forbes that is coming up next week. Her name is Jessica Huara. She used to play as a right back for PSG and Lyon. She played at the 2017 Euros and 2015 World Cup, so in Canada. And she told me we had the best squad in the history of France with Luisa and Camille and Elise Busaglia. And the problem was always mental. We had the best players in terms of technical ability. She told me we had nothing to envy the US women's national team. We were better technically and we were also good physically. The only difference was the girls at the US squad, they were ready to die on the pitch for their national team or just to grab the win. This is something that France lacks. And she said a sentence that really, I knew about it, but the way she said it, like, it hit me. She told me we have to know how to hurt ourselves. They have to know that against Canada, they might have 60% possession, so they can play open, play football, they can play through the wings, try something new. But against Spain, they will lose possession, they won't have possession. So they have to know how to stay patient, to be patient, and to wait for the right opportunity to attack. So I think this is what is important for France. They have to know that in the group stage, you have three opponents with different type of football. So you have Colombia, who likes to keep the ball, which is the opening match. You have to stay aware of Linda Caicedo and Mayra Ramirez. And it might get physical during this match because we've seen how physical Colombia plays. Against Canada,
Hmm.
it's more of a France has the possession and Canada might play on the long balls. And you've talked about this with Mariam. You can never count them out because they can bring gold or bring a silver medal out of nowhere, even though they most of the countries consider them as the dark horse, even though they're not. They have a good squad. And New Zealand, with the recent problems off the field, might be the weakest link in the group, so it might be another opportunity to try something new. So that's the thing when you're playing such a short tournament with 12 of the best national teams, they have to adapt. I have a stat for you. There's a guy, he's a journalist, he's French, his name is Daniel Marquez. He's one of the few who work on statistics and data in French football. In 2024, France scored 10 goals. Only one of the 10 goals was out of open play. It was an open play goal. It was the
Whoa.
last goal of Vicky Besho against Ireland. Other than that,
Oh,
they
wow.
had 9 goals, five coming from a corner, two from a free kick, and two from a penalty. So it's like they're not managing to find the solution, even though they have Kaditiato Diani, Delphine Cascarino, Marie-Antoinette Katoto, Kenza Dali in midfield. So it's not working tactically. So maybe if they know it's not, and maybe if it's continues to be tough, maybe they're gonna go for set pieces. We really don't know. When you have Wendy Renard and Katoto and Mbok, maybe that's another tactic. So France's case is really weird. When you look at all these players and you see the input, you're like, why? Why can't they perform on the field? Why is it too hard to just assemble the best 11 players and produce nice football or like efficient football? See?
Yeah, that is an incredible stat. And
Yeah.
you really kind of clarified it for me because so we've been able to watch some we've had to watch on replay for some of these Euro qualifiers. And like against Sweden in their two matches against them, they won the possession battle. In that first match against England, they lost the possession battle 58-42. They still won 2-1.
Yeah.
But as you kind of go over those stats, it really clarified it for me because even watching those matches, something just doesn't look quite right. And you talk about those weapons, like how are you not scoring from open play when you have Diani and Cascarino on the field for you? Like you have to be able to get goals. You have to be able to put pressure on the opposing team's defense. That is symptomatic of there is something in the link up that they're just not quite getting right. I think it'll be really interesting to see. So they open with Colombia. Let's say, Herve Renard, you're out. Assile Toufaily, you're in. What do you
Let's make that happen.
see?
Also, by the way,
I know. By the
I'd
way,
love to
that
see
should
that
just
happen.
be
Wow.
happening anyway.
Yeah.
What is it that you want them to focus on in that opening match versus Colombia?
Sometimes the thing is, okay, we kind of put not put the blame on Renard, but we're like, why isn't he doing something else?
Hmm.
At the same time, when you look at these names and you're not coaching an under 19 side, you're coaching the French national team, which has some of the best players in the world who are starring week in, week out for PSG and Lyon. So sometimes you're just wondering if Hervé, I don't know, if Hervé is asking them not to play through the middle, why not like try? Like even what is he gonna
Right.
do? Like punish you in the locker? What is he gonna do? Like take the phone from you at night? See? And sometimes I'm like, why don't they just go and like try to do something else? Last time my friend told me I miss the days we used to score from a 1-2. So literally just someone has the ball, plays a one, you get the two and you shoot out of the like from outside
Yeah.
the box. And she's like, our goals are all the same. It's either a corner, it's either a cross from Selma and Katoto is there to score. So if I had the choice, I would just like love to ask like why? Why isn't it working? Some kind of combination. And when you look at the midfield, you kind of have the answer. Because
Hmm.
In the last matches, the midfield really changed because of the opponents, because of the last match against Ireland. Hervé wanted to rest some of the players because it was kind of a match with nothing at risk because they already qualified. But the midfield is usually the same. It's Amandine Henry as a 6, and then you have Kenza Dali and Grace Gayoro. So none of them has this additional attacking touch. And that's why I was also one of those who wanted Amel Majri to be in the squad. So she's not even in the 2022. Why is Amel Majri not even called up? That's a subject I don't want to open because I don't want to create issues, because I think it's not a sporting decision. That's my opinion. It's surely not a sporting decision. There's something else we might not know about, because she's been great since coming back from her injury.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a secret to tell. Like, I can't tell you, like, I don't know, just play 4-3-3, have this, have that. I just want it to be faster, make it. I don't care if they're gonna have 65 possession against Colombia if they only gonna manage to have 3 shots on target. They have to
Right.
try, they have to create opportunities, and to do it, they have to have better options or better ways to do it. Play from the midfield, play low crosses. I don't know. It's kind of a hopeless case at this moment. And I'm kind of reflecting the opinion of many fans on X about the women's national team.
That's also why you're here. We need to kind
Yeah.
of hear exactly what it is that we don't know to kind of fill in these gaps. And yeah, obviously watching Amandine Henry in NWSL this season, you kind of see her slowing down a little bit and maybe not as effective. And then you look at the roster construction for France, like you mentioned, it's basically the 4 listed midfielders: Henry, Gayoro, Kenzadali, Sandy Touletti, and then Sandy Baltimore, depending on which she's sort of in the middle. So yeah, I think the roster construction probably a little bit weird. Have they announced if Le Sommer can't appear? I believe the way the rules are set up, somebody could take that spot for maybe some of those games and they can kind of switch out. Has there been any talk about whether she'll be dressed, or would a reserve come in and grab that spot?
He gave a very long answer when he was asked about it. He was like, she's not totally fit yet. She had a meniscus injury or something in the knee. So she had a surgery a few months ago. She just made a recovery. She was starting to get back to training with the squad, and she got the muscle injury. So his answer was, we prefer to keep her out of the 18 for the match against Ireland, to kind of preserve her and to watch her. She's on her recovery. She's getting back to it, but we're not expecting to see her play soon. We will need her to play in the knockout rounds.
Yeah, Emma Hayes was talking about it a little bit. I think during the group stage, I think you can switch out a player, but then you have like 6 hours to notify the Olympic Committee that you're going to switch back. It all seems kind of nonsensical. And I think there was even a change that Emma Hayes was talking about with those rules where it's like you can switch, but you have to send it by carrier pigeon. And it's just like all this stupid stuff. Just make the roster 23 players. Come on, Olympic Committee. What are we like? Book a couple extra rooms in the Olympic Village so we have enough players and we reduce the injury risk. I don't understand all the rules. Sorry for the digression. It's a silly way to do it.
Yeah, 18 players for the Olympics. It's insane. You already have 12 teams, so that's insane.
Right.
But having 18 players for the men's side, the Olympics isn't that important because you have many international competitions and the game is already developed. The Olympics in women's football is so crucial because you really have the 12, I'm not going to say 12 best, because you really have the best of each continent. See, like,
Yeah.
some will say, why is England not there? It's because you only have 3 places in Europe. But you have 12 of the best teams in the world, and you're only able to bring 18 of their players. And it's insane. Why?
Yeah.
Just
Doesn't
for
make
the
any
cost
sense.
of extra medals?
Yeah, the price of gold's been going up, I guess.
Yeah, the Olympics, historically a very poor organization, doesn't generate any money at all. So feel bad for those guys. The Le Sommer injury question, it makes it even trickier because you look at those attacking players. I could see doing this for like your most important player, right?
Mm.
All right, let's hold this spot for, like, if you're Australia, for Sam Kerr. If Sam Kerr is almost back, I can see essentially what they did at the World Cup. But Le Sommer, like, she's probably a reserve, I think, on this team, like with those attackers. But Assile, is there a player that you think, because of the form they're in, maybe the season they had last year, what they've looked like in Euro qualifiers, you're like, this player, we haven't seen it yet, but I think they can take off here in this tournament?
I have to go with Gianni because I would have loved to choose Cascarino because I'm still
Mm.
convinced that in the French squad, the player who's most efficient or who's most dangerous and she can really bring the opportunity or like create the chances for France is Delphine Cascarino. The only
Mm.
issue with Cascarino is that she plays, we talked about it in the last podcast, she plays as a right wing, which is also Gianni's position. And whether it is in Lyon or with the French squad, it's always Gianni who's playing on the right wing. Cascarino is left on the left wing. She doesn't have the best left foot in the world, so it's kind of hard for her to always have to cut inside to play the cross. So I have to
Mm.
say Khadijatou Gianni because at 29, she's also considered now as one of the best French players, but she hasn't won much yet, and she hasn't shown her importance or how crucial she is for the French side. So she might be able to bring, especially on her right side, bring something, and it has to be through her because as we've seen, France only scores through the wings, through the crosses, and she has to find Katoto as much as possible. I would have said Katoto, but I can't choose striker because you have to bring the ball to the striker to score. If
Right.
if, if she ends up touching 5 balls a match, you can't expect her to score a hat trick. But if you manage to fool her with balls and reach her, she can be dangerous. We all know how good she is physically. So I have to go with Gianni.
I like it.
From the squad, like you look at Spain, you say Aitana Bonmati. You look at the US now, you can say Sophia Smith. Like you always have this one player who's kind of rising above being the player. And in France, you kind of don't have this figure except for Gianni, who's trying to make a way for her.
I think that sounds about right. And I always wonder, and this is kind of like the little bit of like cosmic, magical part of football that I always enjoy. Diani is also the type of player who might score one from 22 yards out
Mm.
in open play. And all of a sudden, everybody goes, okay, take a deep breath. We have great talent on this team. I always kind of look for what is a turning point? What's a moment where you could almost like unlock everybody else's confidence? I feel like Diani is that type of player. But to your point, I mean, if Cascarino cuts in onto her right and she gets the ball onto her right foot, she could hit a shot like that too. So I wonder if they're kind of just looking for that moment of magic to kind of get their confidence back a little bit.
Yeah, it happened in the 2015 World Cup in Canada. Amandine Henry scored a great shot. I think she was at 25 meters away, like outside the box, and she scored a wonder. And before this goal, France were kind of like you feel like they were frozen, like not managing to
Yeah.
play too much stress. And after this goal, they kind of were liberated. And I don't really remember because they always get out in the quarterfinal. So I think this year they got out against Canada on penalties or something. But at the time, everyone was saying that they didn't deserve to get eliminated. Like what happened last year in the Women's World Cup against Australia. They dominated, they failed to
Hmm.
score, and after the longest penalty session ever, they were eliminated. So France, they need to feel like they can count off Gianni or count on a shot from, I don't know, maybe Dali or a header from Herve Renard to just boost their confidence or like, yeah, actually, we think we might be able to do something if we play smart.
Yeah.
Do you think it's as simple as the vibes? Because it sounds like, like France is playing this tournament at home. There's some expectations, manager 1 foot out the door. We've seen like this tightness from them. I think Germany's another team that we've seen get tight in these types of tournaments, even though the talent's really there. And then to your point, if we do get a Cascarino rocket or a DNE rocket early, and now we ease the tension, the crowd's happy, we're celebrating. Do you think it's as simple as that it's like, it really kind of depends on which way the game turns? Because like I think alternatively, you look at Colombia, they can be a fast strike team as well. Caicedo, Ramirez, they can flip the game their way pretty quickly. Do you think it's as simple as like, what kind of start do these games have for France? And then maybe what kind of start does France have in this tournament overall that can kind of like propel them forward?
I don't think it's really that simple because as you said, maybe they're gonna manage to, I'm not gonna say dominate the group stage because I believe they won't.
Mm.
I think they're just gonna manage to get out of this group stage first or second, which is the least minimum. The minimum is getting
Mm.
out of it on top. But if they manage to qualify as second, which means avoiding Spain, because if you qualify as a second, you're gonna play against Germany. See, that's how hard the Olympics is, because you don't have time to rest. You have three very high level matches in the group stage and then quarterfinals against Germany or Japan or Brazil, and then you move to the semis. There's no place for error. You have to benefit. So is it really that simple? Like you just have to count on a moment of magic from one of the players? No, because even if they manage to imagine outperform Colombia and win 3-0 and then dominate New Zealand and then win against Canada, when they play against Spain in the quarters or in the semis, they have to remember that Nations League final can't
Mhm.
happen again. So they have to reset, as we're not the favorites here. We have to absorb Spain. We have to stop Bonmati. We have to watch out for Salma Paralluelo. That's the thing, that they need these individual players, but they also have to be realistic that Spain are currently the team to beat. The US wants their revenge from everyone after the last World Cup and from themselves as well. Emma Hayes' first competition. Germany wants to win it again after 2016. So everyone has something to do or something to say. So France, the French players just have to be smart and maybe just have this motivation of it maybe being the last competition for many players. I don't know, you know how Messi at the men's World Cup in Qatar, you feel like he transformed. You always used to see Messi smiling and everything, and at this World Cup he kind of become this monster who wants to find everyone, wants to win every ball. So maybe Amandine Henry has to do this. Maybe Wendy Renard knows that it's now or never for her. So I'm excited
Hmm.
to see if they're really gonna do it or they're gonna fail or like fall into this stress or this scary event, which is an Olympics at home in what I expect to be empty stadiums. So
Oh, wow.
It'll be really interesting to see. And there's always on the table, if I'm looking at the knockout round correctly, the number 2 finisher in Group A could face the number 2 finisher in Group B.
yeah,
So maybe Canada wins Group A, France comes in second. Maybe Germany wins Group B and USA comes in second. Maybe we could get France USA in
yeah,
the knockout round. So that could be fun too. I've kind of like zoned in on your point earlier of France needing to play different ways to
Hmm.
beat these different teams and kind of figuring out ways to adapt. The other thing that sticks out to me now that you mentioned Spain again is that in that Nations League final, it just felt like Diani was like in the corner almost. Like they were just pushing her so wide every time they had the ball. It just felt like they were never threatening in that
mm,
match because
mm.
they never had any angle to get on goal. And to have that happen to a team with strikers like that, it's got to be frustrating for them. So I do wonder, do they just kind of try to force the issue and get the ball in the middle of the field themselves?
Yeah. See, you just resumed it all because I've watched these two matches a lot, and this is Dino is always to go back and like respond to the Barca fans at the beginning when France qualified to play the final against Spain. I had a bunch of my friends who went to watch it in Sevilla. I'm like, oh, I'm not. I have a lot of things to do. I'm not gonna go because we're gonna lose. Like, I don't consider myself French, but as someone who lives in France, like you kind of become attached to the country. And I knew that
Yeah.
they were gonna lose. There was no way they managed to tactically stay on the same line as Spain. For OL
Yeah.
match against Barca in the Women's Champions League final, because you had some internationals with Damaris, with Lindsay, I thought it might be a different image. It ended up not being because the players, you felt like some of the players who played against Spain were entering the match against Barca with the same fear. Like, what are we
Hmm.
going to do? Like, I'm saying, I'm just giving something. I've noticed that Selma Basha is one of the best at taking the ball and moving forward on the line and just crossing. She was too busy defending on Karen Graham Hansen that she did nothing in the match, which
Yeah.
also happened in the Nations League final because Spain are so fast with moving the ball. You have to stay awake, 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 awake. And when you have the ball, you're too busy trying to keep possession that you don't manage to create chances. So, to get back to your question, Grant, I think that they have to realize that if Gianni isn't able to do something from the wings, maybe if Dali finds herself in a place where she can shoot, she has to try. Maybe the goalie won't catch it, maybe it will fall, maybe Katoto will be there to continue. So they have to create or be creative, because we've seen against Barca, but also against Spain, it was too hard to watch, really. Gianni was just running, trying to get the ball, trying to find a pass, like make herself visible so that her teammates in the middle try to find her, but it was kind of impossible.
Grant and I have talked about this also with the U.S. women's national team,
Mm.
where they seem to have kind of like underinvested a little bit in the midfield. And they're like, all right, we want to go around you or we want to go over the top. And it is real frustrating. You know, obviously we just watched a 0-0 send-off match against Costa Rica.
Mm.
But yeah, I think Graham Hansen against Basha, I don't like to think about that too much. It's very upsetting for me as one of the world's foremost Basha fans. But I think I agree with you, Assile. I'd love to see France kind of attack in the middle of the field. I'd love to see just maybe Baltimore just sprinting up the middle of the field with the ball, just kind of trying to dance a little bit, Gayoro maybe in support there, and then just creating some different angles, because when defenses know what's coming, even what we just saw here with like a Costa Rica and the USA, if they know what's coming, it's sort of easy to defend.
Yeah.
And I think we saw that both with OL and Barca and in the Nations League final. Being a little bit unpredictable would be definitely a benefit to this team. One final question from my end, Grant, I don't know if you have anything else, but Assile, I know you mentioned maybe the expectations or the hope is the gold medal, but if you're making a prediction, where do you imagine this team finishes by the end of the tournament?
I think it's really gonna depend on the opponent in the semifinals. If we fall against Spain, we're gonna stop at the semifinals and hopefully try to get the bronze. But if they manage to finish second and then they're gonna face Spain later on in the final, it would be a final. But me personally, I think it's gonna be a semifinal exit.
So
All
hopefully
right.
a bronze medal, we'll see.
The first
I
ever
like it.
bronze medal for France.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be in the midst of kind of coaching turnover and generational turnover on the squad. Expectations are high in French football, as they should be. But I think if you walk away with a bronze medal, I think that's still something to be proud of. And it would be I think it'd be a nice moment for those players kind of making their way out after so many just historic careers, Lebanon and Renard. Like, that would be a wonderful way for them to go out. Not quite as wonderful as winning the gold, but I still think I'm with you. I still think that's on the table. Dino and I joke that it's hard to convince me when a team has a great roster that they can't do great things. So if they can kind of get over those troubles in the midfield and be a little more brave, then again, you're going to be surprised by this, Assile. I'm going to make a comparison to the England men's national team. Just play fast, play attacking, play on the front foot from the start. Don't wait till you get down a goal against Spain to try to attack. Just go and attack. You have the players to do it. So
Yeah.
I am just wildly excited. And this actually leads me into my final question. The atmosphere. This is the Paris Olympics. There are going to be matches across France. What are you expecting in the atmosphere in these football stadiums?
I think if you're asking from a fan perspective, I would tell you I don't mind seeing France get out of the group stage if this means just being guaranteed that stadiums will be full, because it's the thing that is kind of terrifying everyone now. If you go on the website of the Paris Olympics tickets and try to get a ticket for the women's football matches, it's too easy because you have too many matches with kind of not even a 10% capacity sold so far.
Oh my gosh.
Because you have to understand something is that French, I think it's almost everyone now, but French people love the Olympics. And for them, because of how long the football season is, for them the Olympics means shutting down the football door and just enjoying
Wow.
tennis, enjoying swimming, gymnastics. I'm someone who doesn't watch any men's football match at the Olympics. I just look at the results and highlights. I watch the women's football at the Olympics because I think it's important for its development. So a lot of French people don't mind paying, or even the fans who are coming, 200, 300, maybe $500 to watch track and field instead of spending their afternoon watching a football match at $15, because I'm going to watch many matches, the opening against Colombia and the Groupama, the ticket is at $15, 15 euros, which is
Oh
$14,
my
which is
God.
nothing. And
Wow.
that's my expectations. We will have around 10 to 15K in the stadium if Colombia fans show up. If not, it will be a disaster. Most of the French are on vacation. Most of them were gonna run out of France to avoid the tourists for the Olympics. And football isn't the priority of the French people. So this is France. You're saying I'm talking about France. I'm gonna go watch the US against Germany in Marseille.
Awesome.
I really hope I'm not alone with a bunch of people. So far, you don't have the numbers. You don't have the opportunity to see how many tickets are sold. But it looks like you won't have full stadiums. So it won't be like the Women's World Cup in 2019. It will. I'm really afraid that we're gonna have many matches. Especially, I don't know. Imagine Nigeria against Japan. You don't have many Nigerians living in France. You don't have many Japan. I don't know if they will come to France or if most
Yeah.
of the people coming will really stay in Paris to watch other competitions other than football. So that's something that is frightening me, I'm gonna say.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. I did not expect that. And imagine, I mean, Japan versus Nigeria, that's an incredible match. Like that, like that. There's so many good players on both of those sides.
I hope I'm
Hopefully
wrong.
people, hopefully people come to their senses. I did not expect that.
Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully something immediately comes up. But imagine it's the Olympics. People are dying for a ticket, and then the organizing committee is doing something which is if you buy 4 tickets, instead of having the ticket for $20, you're gonna get it for 15. So they kind of inviting people to the stadium. Come, take a free ticket, just come.
Oh my
Because
God.
I think they know so far that you'll have many matches with kind of no capacity. Marseille isn't a women's football city. They don't have that
Yeah.
much of a big team. Nice, where the US women's national team is playing, isn't a women's football city. I had this discussion with many French journalists. They had the same fears. So hopefully we're all mistaken and we'll have people in the stadiums. But I think it's not gonna be the best in terms of show and attendance and world-breaking records.
Wow. Okay. And I got to tell you, I mean, Dino, you might have to look into it because you're over there on the East Coast. On my working class salary, it'd be tough for me to go from Seattle to Paris. I mean, I should have considered this. I should have considered this months ago that I should get out there to watch these matches. But it might be tough for me to get out there. Dino, I know you have familial responsibilities to consider here.
Yeah, the 2-year-old makes it a little tough. I drew a circle around the 27 World Cup in Brazil. I already told the wife and then the kid. He'll be 5 by that point. I think we'll be smooth sailing. So hopefully those $15 ticket prices, they persist all the way till 2027. I'm very bummed to know I could have just saved a few $100 and probably seen every match. But I will say, if you're attending the Olympics or if you're in France, go watch this football. I mean, these are some of the best players in the world, some of the best teams in the world. Grant and I were doing the math yesterday. When you look at 4 of these teams are not going to make the knockout stage. You start looking at who that 4th team might be. You're like, there's going to be a big team that's really, really upset. I think you have to be realistic about how competitive this field is. I'm really expecting kind of anything at this point.
Yeah.
There's so much turmoil. It's going to be a different cities. You're talking about maybe the empty stadiums. I think a lot of flux with these teams. We're talking about New Zealand, the managing situation. France has something similar. So I want to take all of that into consideration, but then also focus maybe on the football on the pitch, because I think the football is going to be absolutely out of this world. If it's an extension of what we saw in the World Cup and what we've seen also like in Euro qualifiers and some of these other recent tournaments, I mean, this is probably just going to take the sport to a new level. So if you have the means, if you can make it, definitely go out, grab a ticket. You will absolutely not be disappointed. I feel 100% confident saying that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people from Australia writing in the comments, or writing just on X that they're gonna travel to France. I saw someone writing that he's staying for 3 weeks and he's gonna attend all of Australia's matches because they kind of all in the south of France. So that's a nice place to stay in the south of France.
There you go.
And
Not bad.
you'll watch football for $15, which is kind of a meal. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
All right, Assile. So we've got your prediction. We've talked about the roster. We've talked about the managerial situation. Is there anything else that friends of the show, fans of the program, fans of women's football, is there anything else we should think about before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it. I think there's something for me, but also for you guys, is that we should really look or keep an eye on Nigeria and Zambia, because Zambia in the last Olympics at Tokyo, they lost at 10-3 against Netherlands. Defensively, they were kind of non-existent, but these 4 years, they've developed a lot. They have two of the best strikers at the moment with Kundananji and Banda. So I'm excited to see Zambia. Like when you look at USA, Australia, Germany, Zambia, some will say, okay, Zambia is fourth. Who's the first three? How it's gonna end? Maybe we shouldn't count Zambia out. So as Dino said, that's the nice thing also about the Olympics, that you can't have favorites. Everyone has something to do or something to say. Same for Nigeria. Japan is I know you guys love Japan, so Japan is can be the dark horse who is not a dark horse. So they always present, always
Right.
ready to surprise. That's it for me.
Look at us, just three Japan fans doing a podcast. All right, team. I think we did it. This has been another episode of Into the Channel. Thank you for watching, listening, liking, subscribing, just plain hanging out with us. And remember, like if you liked, and subscribe or follow Into the Channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. Huge thank you to Assile for rejoining us here at the ITC. Big thank you to my co-host as well, Mr. Granango. I think this wraps up our individual country analyses, but we'll be back later this week with a little bit of a zoom out for this tournament. We're going to go top to bottom, rehash all the teams, get everybody fully prepped, hit some of those countries that we weren't able to cover in our preview. But yeah, man, I appreciate you rocking with me on this. It's been quite a journey, and we haven't even played any football yet, so very exciting.
Yeah, likewise, buddy. Thanks for handling the hosting duties. As always, thank you to Assile again for joining us. And no matter where you are, hop on Google Flights, look at all the deal websites out there, try to get out there, watch some football for, roughly the price of a croissant and a tea. So, I mean, if you can get out there and watch there, please do. We'll be following along, and we will talk to you guys next time.